Tonight, I'll tell you a story that isn't just scary. It feels real. This is the story of Evelyn Gray, a quiet artist who painted alone in the dark. Until one night, her art began to paint itself. She said, "Shadows have memories." No one believed her. Not until the night she went live, and something behind her moved. This isn't just a story. It's a whisper from the black canvas. So stay with me, till the very end. Candle. The road to the small Montana town was narrow, winding through dead pine forests and frozen creeks. Evelyn Rowe had driven all night, her old car coated in dust and frost. She didn't speak a word during the 12-hour drive, not even when her phone rang. The silence around her was so complete, it felt like the world had stopped existing beyond the headlights. Evelyn was an artist, but not the kind that galleries welcomed. Her last exhibition in New York had been shut down after people complained that her paintings felt wrong. One critic wrote that her work creates a silence that makes you hear things that aren't there. She didn't disagree. That was exactly what she wanted. She arrived in the town just before dawn, a collection of gray houses clinging to the edge of the woods. The air was so cold it burned her lungs. The house she had rented was old, wooden, and forgotten, standing alone on the outskirts. Its windows looked like empty eyes. Inside, everything smelled of dust and pine resin. The floorboards moaned softly when she walked across them, as though the house remembered footsteps that were not hers. She unpacked her paints, her brushes, and one cracked mirror she always carried, though she never looked into it. That night, she sat on the wooden floor with a single lamp on. The yellow light made the corners of the room vanish into black. She didn't mind. She preferred the dark. It was honest. Before sleeping, she looked out the window. The forest beyond her house was still, the sky heavy with gray clouds. For a second, she thought she saw movement between the trees. Not an animal, not a person, just a shifting of darkness itself. But when she blinked, the forest was silent again. The next morning, Evelyn woke to the sound of wind scraping against the window pane. The forest outside was pale and colorless, like the world had been drained of light overnight. She made coffee in silence and stared at the blank canvas leaning against the wall. It had been months since she had touched a brush. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but anticipation. Painting was the only way she could still hear her own thoughts clearly. Without it, everything around her felt unreal. She mixed the colors carefully, gray, black, and a strange green she'd never used before. It looked like mold in sunlight. When the first stroke touched the canvas, something inside her clicked, a familiar stillness, like the pause before a storm. At first, she meant to paint a forest, but the trees never formed. Instead, her hand moved on its own, sketching curves and empty spaces. It wasn't a forest anymore. It was a shape, something hollow, bending like light itself. When she stepped back, she realized what she'd made wasn't a landscape at all. It was a shadow, but not hers. It had a human outline, tall and stretched, as if the figure was standing somewhere else, just beyond the painting, and the shadow had slipped into her world by mistake. Evelyn frowned. The shape didn't make sense. There was no source of light in the room that could have cast it that way. She turned off the lamp, opened the curtains, and studied the reflection in the window. The room looked normal, empty, but when she looked back at the painting, the brushstrokes seemed darker, wetter, as if the paint was still moving. She took a photo of the piece and posted it online with the caption, "Study of a shadow, no reference." That night, the post received its first comment. "Whose shadow is that behind you?" The next day, the question from her post still haunted Evelyn's mind. Whose shadow is that behind you? She tried to ignore it, convincing herself it was just a trick of bad lighting, maybe a reflection from the window. But when she opened her art app again, she noticed something strange. In the picture she had uploaded, the light source didn't match her studio at all. In the photo, the shadow fell to the left, though her lamp stood on the right. She double-checked the room, the angle, the timestamp, everything. Nothing explained it. The shadow was being lit by something that didn't exist. She decided to recreate the scene. She placed the canvas back in its spot, turned on the same lamp, and took another picture. But this time, the shadow didn't appear at all. The wall behind her was blank. Puzzled, she examined the painting again. Under the daylight, the black pigment looked deeper than before, not matte, but absorbing. It was as if the darkness on the canvas swallowed the light around it. When she leaned closer, her reflection vanished completely, replaced by a dull shimmer like moving smoke. That night, Evelyn stayed up late sketching. Every new piece, no matter what she began to draw, faces, chairs, trees, always ended up bending toward darkness, forming that same elongated figure. It felt like her hand was being guided. When she finally turned off the light, she noticed something unsettling. The shadow of her easel stretched the wrong way, toward the lamp instead of away from it. She stared for a long time, not breathing, until it slowly shifted back to normal. She laughed nervously, telling herself she was exhausted. But in her final sketch of the night, without realizing it, she wrote 3 faint words along the bottom edge of the page. Light belongs elsewhere. For days, Evelyn tried to paint something else, anything that didn't turn into that black silhouette, but every canvas refused her. The brush seemed to resist light colors, dragging itself toward darkness. Frustrated yet fascinated, she began photographing her progress and posting it online again, trying to convince herself that what she was creating was still art, not madness. At first, her followers praised her new style. They called it haunting, beautiful, even spiritual. The comments section filled with theories. Some said her shadows represented grief. Others said she was capturing the loneliness of modern life. Evelyn didn't respond to any of them. She simply kept uploading more. But then the tone changed. A few sharp-eyed followers began noticing odd inconsistencies in her posts. One wrote, "The light keeps shifting in every picture." Another said, "There's someone standing behind you in frame 3, but not in frame 4. Evelyn scrolled back through her feed, her pulse quickening. They were right. In one photo, near the edge of her canvas, a faint silhouette lingered, a human-shaped smudge she'd never seen before. She zoomed in, pixel by pixel. The figure had no detail, no eyes or mouth, yet its outline seemed disturbingly aware of the camera. When she checked the original file on her phone, the shape wasn't there, only in the version uploaded online. That night, her notifications wouldn't stop. People were tagging friends, debating what they saw. Some insisted it was clever digital art. Others swore the shadow was moving from post to post. Evelyn's follower count doubled overnight. Her inbox flooded with requests. What are you painting next? Is it real? Can you show more of the room? For the first time in months, Evelyn felt seen, truly seen. But as she stared at the glowing screen, she couldn't shake the feeling that something else was watching too. Something inside the darkness of her own feed. By the end of the week, Evelyn's online fame had turned into a quiet unease. Every time she posted, people found new movements in the background of her videos. Things she swore weren't there when she filmed them. A door that seemed slightly open one moment and closed the next. A second paintbrush lying on the table that she didn't remember using. But she laughed it off. The internet loved to imagine ghosts. Then came the night of the live stream. Evelyn hadn't planned it. She just clicked go live after a long day, wanting to prove there was nothing supernatural about her work. The chat flooded immediately. Hundreds of viewers asking questions, spamming emojis, demanding to see her studio. She turned her phone's camera toward the easel, smiling faintly. Behind her, the room looked calm. The same scattered brushes, the same single lamp glowing softly. She began painting in silence, focused, her strokes slow and deliberate. The audience watched her intently. Comments scrolled by so fast they blurred. Then the feed froze for half a second. When it resumed, the chat exploded. "Behind you. What's that? Turn around." Evelyn frowned, reading the screen. "Behind me," she murmured, half laughing. She turned slightly, showing the empty space. Nothing. Only the pale wall and her own shadow stretching harmlessly beside her. But the comments wouldn't stop. "No, not your shadow. The other one." Confused, she leaned closer to the screen. The live image showed her back, and in the far corner of the studio, just beyond the frame's light, something darker than black was standing. Still, human-shaped. Her heart stopped. She spun around. The corner was empty, just air and cold. When she turned back, the live stream had ended on its own. The screen went black for her viewers. But before it cut off completely, one final frame flashed. The shadow stepping forward. The live stream had cut off mid-scream. Or at least, that's what people online claimed. Thousands of viewers flooded social media within minutes. saying they'd heard Evelyn gasp right before the screen went black. Others swore they saw the shadow move, that it stretched toward her just as the camera froze. Evelyn herself never watched the playback. She didn't want to. She told herself it was a glitch, internet lag, pixel noise, pareidolia. Her phone overheated often. The camera could have warped. But deep down, she knew what she'd seen, even if only for a breath, wasn't a trick of light. The next morning, she found her phone on the studio floor, battery dead, as though it had been running all night. When she powered it on, a new video sat in her uploads, time-stamped hours after she went to bed. It was titled Live Replay Shadow Study. She hadn't posted it. The video opened with silence. Evelyn was sitting in her studio, painting again, but the lighting was different. The lamp glowed a dull red, and her movements seemed slower, out of sync with real time. Behind her, in the darkness, another shape moved, mimicking her gestures perfectly, like a puppet tethered by invisible strings. She scrubbed through the footage, her throat tightening. In every frame, the black figure's brush moved just a little before hers, leading her hand. Halfway through the replay, the sound crackled. A faint whisper rose beneath the static, a low voice repeating something she couldn't quite make out. Evelyn turned the volume up, heart pounding. The words became clear. Keep painting. Her phone crashed. When she reopened YouTube, the video had already reached 10,000 views. In the comments, one sentence repeated over and over again. It's not her streaming. Evelyn didn't sleep that night. She sat by the studio window, wrapped in a blanket, watching the reflection of her own lamp tremble on the glass. Every time she blinked, she thought she saw movement behind her. But when she turned, nothing waited except her canvases, standing in the half-dark like silent witnesses. By morning, she decided to prove she wasn't losing her mind. She set up her phone on a tripod, started recording in daylight this time, and began painting again. No live stream, no audience, just her and the brush. At first, everything seemed normal. The strokes were steady, the colors clean. But the longer she worked, the more her rhythm changed. Her right hand slowed down, yet the brush in her left hand twitched, even though she wasn't holding anything. It was as if an invisible pulse guided her. When she played back the footage later that afternoon, her stomach turned to ice. At the start of the video, only she was visible, calm, focused. But after a few minutes, a faint blur appeared at the edge of the frame, right where the shadow had stood during her stream. Slowly, it sharpened, taking shape. Another hand, black, thin, trembling, rose behind her shoulder. It held an invisible brush, moving perfectly in sync with hers. But it wasn't a reflection. Its angle was wrong. The fingers bent in reverse. Evelyn stopped breathing as the shadow hand traced a shape on the empty air, a dark outline forming near her canvas, like paint spreading through water. When she checked the real painting again, the shape was there, even though she hadn't painted it. Panicked, she tried to scrub through the video. For one frame, the camera glitched, showing both her hands on screen, but one was reversed, palm outward, as if pressing against the inside of the lens. The moment she paused it, the brush on her desk rolled off on its own and hit the floor. The following days bled into one another like wet ink. Evelyn barely ate or slept. Her entire studio had become a graveyard of unfinished paintings, all the same figure, all the same impossible shadow. The more she tried to paint something different, the faster the darkness returned, swallowing her colors until every brushstroke turned black. She covered the windows with old sheets to block the outside light. The world beyond them felt wrong now, too bright, too false. Inside, only the dim glow of her lamp remained, flickering softly as if breathing with her. When she moved through the room, she noticed her shadow no longer followed her body. Sometimes it lagged behind, like it had to think before imitating her. Other times, it moved first. Once, she swore she saw it lift its hand before she did. She tried destroying her work, ripping canvases apart, smearing paint across them. But by morning, the pieces she had torn were whole again, restored, waiting. Her phone buzzed constantly with new notifications. Someone had been uploading her private recordings, late-night sessions she didn't remember filming. The comments beneath them grew disturbing. She's painting with something that isn't paint. Her shadow looks thicker now. Her reflection in the window had changed too. It looked tired, yes, but older, slightly detached, as if it belonged to someone else entirely. That night, she sat before her latest canvas and whispered to herself, "Just one more." The brush dipped into black paint, but when she raised it, her hand trembled. She didn't want to move. She could feel something holding her wrist from behind, gentle, deliberate, patient. And then, as she let go, the brush kept moving on its own. By now, the entire neighborhood had noticed Evelyn's strange behavior. The woman who had once been invisible was now impossible to ignore. Her nearest neighbor, an old man named Clark, told the sheriff he often saw her working late into the night. "She doesn't turn her lights on," he said, "but her windows glow anyway." At first, no one believed him, but others began to talk too. Delivery drivers who claimed to hear faint scratching from inside her house. Teenagers who swore they saw movement behind the curtains even when Evelyn wasn't home. One woman, Mrs. Calloway, described something more chilling. She said that while walking her dog one evening, she looked up at Evelyn's window and saw two silhouettes, one standing perfectly still and another moving slowly, like a puppet. They were the same height, she whispered, but one of them didn't have a head. Soon, people stopped walking near her house altogether. Packages were left at the gate, uncollected. The forest behind her property grew darker, the air heavier. Inside, Evelyn barely noticed the outside world anymore. But sometimes, she would glance at the covered windows and see faint shapes moving across the fabric, long, stretched shadows, passing without footsteps. One afternoon, she heard children outside laughing. Curious, she peeked through a torn corner of the curtain. The kids were pointing at her house, daring each other to go closer. As she stared down at them, her breath caught. Her reflection in the glass didn't match her. The reflection was already looking at the children before she did. That night, the laughter returned, but this time, it came from inside the walls. Evelyn's messages went unanswered. Her phone filled with missed calls from friends, gallery owners, even the police. She ignored them all. Talking to people felt pointless now. Their voices sounded far away, like echoes from another world. She stopped eating altogether. The only thing she touched anymore was her paintbrush. The walls of her studio were nearly black, covered in layers of oil so thick they reflected no light at all. The air reeked of turpentine and decay. Every night, she heard a faint whisper from behind the walls. Sometimes it said her name. Sometimes it just breathed. Once, half asleep, she whispered back, "What do you want?" The whisper replied, "To be seen." The next morning, she found words scratched into her desk. "You're not the artist anymore." She deleted all her social media accounts, but within an hour, new profiles appeared, all using her name, her photos, her art. The posts kept coming, each one darker than the last. In one, her own face was blurred. In another, the shadow stood where she should have been. Evelyn's final message to her old art group was brief. "It's painting by itself now." She unplugged her lamp, shattered her mirror, and sat in total darkness. Yet the light didn't disappear. A dull gray glow still filled the room, coming from nowhere. She pressed her palms against her eyes to block it, but even there, in the dark behind her eyelids, she saw movement. A tall figure, standing close, hand raised in greeting. When she finally opened her eyes, she realized she was no longer sitting alone. 3 days passed before anyone came to check on Evelyn. Her gallery manager, worried about the silence, sent a local deputy to her house. The door was unlocked. The place smelled like oil and ash. The officer stepped inside, flashlight trembling in his hand as he called her name. No answer. The living room was covered in unfinished canvases, each showing the same figure. A tall, faceless silhouette painted in pure black. The paint never seemed to dry. When the deputy brushed his finger across one, it left no mark. The surface felt cold, almost wet, as if the figure was still forming. He called again. From upstairs came a sound, soft, dragging, like cloth sliding against wood. Slowly he climbed. The hallway lights flickered, though the power was off. At the far end, Evelyn's studio door stood ajar. Through the gap, he saw movement. A figure hunched over a canvas, painting in rhythmic strokes. "Miss Gray?" he asked, pushing the door open. Evelyn sat with her back to him, whispering something under her breath. The room pulsed with a strange, low hum. Her skin looked pale, almost translucent, veins dark like ink. The deputy stepped closer. On the canvas before her was a painting of the very room they were in. Same walls, same shadows, even him, standing behind her, flashlight in hand. But there was a difference. In the painting, something stood behind him. He turned around instantly. Nothing. Just the sound of his own breathing. When he faced forward again, Evelyn was gone. The chair was empty. The brush still moved, slowly, painting her figure back onto the canvas. The deputy's flashlight flickered once more, then died completely. Outside, neighbors swore they saw someone new in Evelyn's window that night, standing tall, motionless, watching. The next morning, the police sealed off Evelyn's home. Reporters gathered by the gates, their lenses catching glimpses of her darkened studio. Inside, everything looked undisturbed, except for one canvas. It was completely black. No image, no signature. Just a single smear of deep, shifting color that seemed to absorb the light around it. One detective leaned in, saying it almost looked wet. Another reached out and swore the surface moved beneath his hand. That afternoon, as forensic teams cataloged her belongings, strange things began to happen. Cameras malfunctioned. Flashlights dimmed. A cold mist filled the hallway even though the day outside was bright. When they tried to lift the black painting from the wall, it wouldn't budge, as if fused to the house itself. In the final police report, several officers mentioned hearing faint sounds while searching the upper floors. A woman's voice, humming softly. The melody stopped whenever they spoke, then returned as soon as they fell silent. By sunset, every piece of Evelyn's art had vanished. Only the black canvas remained, pulsing faintly under the dying light. Weeks later, the house was abandoned. The walls began to peel, but the painting never changed. People passing by claimed to see movement inside it, the faint outline of a woman walking slowly deeper into the dark. And sometimes, when the moonlight hit it just right, they said you could see her face, still painting, still whispering, her eyes completely black. No one entered after that. No one dared to remove the canvas. But at 3 a.m. every night, the light inside Evelyn's studio flickers on, even though the power was cut years ago. Months passed after Evelyn's disappearance. The house stood silent at the edge of town, doors locked, curtains drawn, and the smell of oil still clinging to the walls. Most people avoided it, but not everyone could let go. A small team of independent investigators, a documentarian named Reese, a sound engineer called Dana, and their cameraman, Joel, decided to film a special episode for their online paranormal series, Unknown Thresholds. Evelyn's story had gone viral. Her name was whispered like a digital curse. They thought they'd capture a few scares, maybe earn 1 million views. They arrived just after sunset. The air around the house felt unnaturally cold. Inside, dust hung thick, but the walls looked fresh. New strokes of paint glistened faintly under the flashlight beam. Joel adjusted his camera. Dana ran the audio. Reese began narrating softly. This is where the artist Evelyn Gray vanished during her final live stream. Their equipment began to fail immediately. Batteries drained, microphones hissed. Yet their cameras recorded, even when the screens went black. In the kitchen, they found dozens of brushes in a glass jar, bristles still wet. The paint was black, but not ordinary. It shimmered faintly, like it absorbed light instead of reflecting it. As they explored deeper, they noticed movement inside the canvases. Not reflections, movement. Something behind the layers of paint, shifting, breathing. Dana began hearing faint whispers through her headset. Joel caught a glimpse of someone standing in the hallway. A woman, motionless, her eyes glinting in the dark. When he turned the light on, the figure vanished, leaving only streaks of wet paint on the floor. Their final recording ended abruptly. Reese's voice whispered, "There's someone still painting in here." 2 days later, the footage was uploaded automatically to their channel. None of them returned to claim it. At the end of the video, a single frame flashed for half a second. A black. Months passed after Evelyn's disappearance. The house stood silent at the edge of town, doors locked, curtains drawn, and the smell of oil still clinging to the walls. Most people avoided it, but not everyone could let go. A small team of independent investigators, a documentarian named Reese, a sound engineer called Dana, and their cameraman, Joel, decided to film a special episode for their online paranormal series, Unknown Thresholds. Evelyn's story had gone viral. Her name was whispered like a digital curse. They thought they'd capture a few scares, maybe earn 1 million views. They arrived just after sunset. The air around the house felt unnaturally cold. Inside, dust hung thick, but the walls looked fresh. New strokes of paint glistened faintly under the flashlight beam. Joel adjusted his camera. Dana ran the audio. Reese began narrating softly. This is where the artist Evelyn Gray vanished during her final live stream. Their equipment began to fail immediately. Batteries drained, microphones hissed. Yet their cameras recorded, even when the screens went black. In the kitchen, they found dozens of brushes in a glass jar, bristles still wet. The paint was black, but not ordinary. It shimmered faintly, like it absorbed light instead of reflecting it. As they explored deeper, they noticed movement inside the canvases. Not reflections, movement. Something behind the layers of paint, shifting, breathing. Dana began hearing faint whispers through her headset. Joel caught a glimpse of someone standing in the hallway. A woman, motionless, her eyes glinting in the dark. When he turned the light on, the figure vanished, leaving only streaks of wet paint on the floor. Their final recording ended abruptly. Reese's voice whispered, "There's someone still painting in here." 2 days later, the footage was uploaded automatically to their channel. None of them returned to claim it. At the end of the video, a single frame flashed for half a second. A black. No one knows how many people saw the stream before it disappeared, but something changed afterward. Across the world, artists began reporting the same dream. A woman whispering, "Let me finish your painting." At first, they laughed it off. But then their art began to shift. Paintings darkened overnight. Sculptures warped, their shapes subtly twisting into human forms. Some swore their shadows no longer matched their movements. Online, a private forum emerged, the Gray Circle. Members posted photos of strange symbols appearing near their work, black handprints, distorted brush marks, sometimes words written backward. Every post ended with the same sentence. "It's painting through me." Months later, a team of paranormal investigators entered Evelyn's abandoned house. Inside, they found dozens of new canvases, wet, fresh, still drying. Each one showed a different artist's face, eyes hollow, mouths open as if mid-scream. In the center stood the black painting, now cracked and pulsating faintly with dull red light. One investigator tried filming it, but his camera immediately died. The others claimed to hear faint breathing, not from the room, but from inside the walls. When they looked closer, the canvas surface began to ripple. Behind the paint, a human eye blinked. That was the last recording ever recovered. To this day, the painting remains locked in an evidence vault, sealed behind lead glass. But technicians working there whisper that sometimes, when the room goes quiet, they hear scratching from within, like a brush on canvas. And occasionally, when the lights flicker, a single message appears across the security screens in dripping black text. The painting never ends. This was the story of Evelyn Gray, the artist who painted her own shadow. A story where colors vanish and silence speaks. A canvas that never stays blank. And a painting that finishes itself. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon bell. Because the next story is darker, quieter, and closer than you think. Waning Crescent Moon. Thank you for staying till the end. And remember, sometimes the thing that's watching you isn't just a painting.